All right, so now we've gotten to a point where we have managed all of our data load per se, based on the idea that everything is working good. So we have data from our, actually, let me go ahead and go to format. I'm going to do an auto layout here, and I'm going to select everything, and I'm going to move it over just a hair because I know that I'm going to do something here with right about at this location. So one of the things that we have to look out for is that we know that data may, because we've designed this, the data that we look up here, here, and here, for the most part, it should match. But remember, the point of doing an ETL project has a lot to do with that whole data consistency and that one version of the truth that we're trying to get. So we want to apply some kind of like error proof, right? So we need to do some kind of error checking or errors checking. So we need to make sure that if there is any errors that occur during these lookups, meaning if there's something that doesn't match, that we have like a bucket that we can store it in, and so I'm going to put it in a bucket, and that way we can come back and take a look at it. So we're going to use our eyes, take a look at it, and figure out what's happening. Here's how we do that. So the first thing we want to do is we're going to apply a union. And what's going to happen is that we're going to take everything that is not a match. So look up no match. Here, look up no match. And right here, look up no match. And we're going to put them all in this union. Okay. And what's going to end up happening with this union is that everything that's an error is going to get combined into this one module. Now, the last thing that we're going to do is we're going to make a new flat file destination. Okay. And what we're going to do is we're going to call this PTI errors. All right. So everything from this union that's an error that, is kicked back, that's a non-match, is going to go to PTI errors. All right. I'm going to go ahead and save all this so that way I make sure that I have everything kind of put together. So now we have a red X in our PTI errors destination is because we don't have a flat file associated with this. So we're going to go into edit this particular module, and the only flat file that we have right now is our batch CSV file. So we have to create a new one, and it's going to be delimited. We'll select on OK, and we're going to call this one PTI errors. All right. And we're going to browse, and what we want to do is we want to put this in our batch location up here. And if you go up to your root server location, just click on PTI batch data, and we're going to create a file here. I'm going to right click and go to new, call it text document, and I'm going to call it PTI errors. Boom. Click on that, hit open, and it works just as we want it. Okay. Now let's go look at the columns. All right, so these columns, by the way, come from what we're seeing right here. Those columns, by the way, are read from the union file or the union block that's before it. So in here are all those other items that are coming in before it. We can look at a preview. One of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to hit this checkbox and say column names are in the first row of data. So if we want to look at this data later, we can, and we'll see what columns are kind of lined up. So I'm going to hit OK, and I'm going to look at the mappings, make sure everything maps out just well. Hit OK, and I'm going to hit Save All. Now, this process should be complete. Coming back to SQL Server Management Studio, we should be able to run this and just fill the data in our fact table. So when we run this script, we'll see some data in here after we've run through it. So Now that it's saved, let's go ahead and run it and cross our fingers. Okay, we can see at the bottom left hand of the screen that the build has started. And also it looks like I'm getting a little not response from Visual Studio. A lot of times this happens, but if you just let it cook for a little while, it'll work out. Okay, so here's a couple of notes to take to kind of look at with this particular item. So I'm going to expand out the window here so we can see a little bit more. So first thing is that if you will notice, everything of course has got the green checkbox. But right here, there's a number that's available and it says 4588 rows. And notice that when we look at the flow, that flow continues to come through here. We have 4,588 rows that come through here, 4,588 rows that come through here, but all of a sudden we have 4,587 rows that get stored in the database. And we have one row that goes to the union, and then it then gets written to our error file. So if we open up our error file, we should only see one row. Now, why is this? Well, part of this has to do with what happened in this module. So in this module, we're looking up the product code. And remember, these modules only look up for matches. So that means we had one row that was not a match. And it went through and got written to our error file. So let's go ahead and hit stop. And let's go look at our error file real quick. So here's our error file. And you could see that there is some information here. And I'm going to let it sit here on the screen for about another 10 seconds. And I'm not going to tell you anything about this. So there's a discussion question for you to take a look at with this assignment and figure out what this actually means. Okay, so let's also go back to SQL Server Management Studio and let's rerun this script. And now we can see specifically in the fact table, as well as all the other tables, there's data in it. But let's do this real quick. Let's just look at the fact table. So now the fact table is in there. And if I scroll to the bottom, you can see that I have, roughly 4,587 rows, right? And you can inspect the data that's loaded here with what's in that error file to kind of get a determination as to why that occurred. All right. So with this, you actually have completed the integration services package. What I'm going to ask you to do is go ahead and delete everything from your data warehouse when you turn this in. So I'm going to copy this whole script. I'm going to go ahead and paste it into my SQL Server Management Studio, and this will eliminate all the data that's in the data warehouse. So I'm going to execute it. I'll see that nothing is in there. And this way, when I go to grade your file, I can go ahead and I can run the dimension load, make sure that there's no errors. I can run the fact load, make sure there's no errors. And of course, I'll look at your Word file, determine what your response was to that final question. So with that, please let me know if you have questions. I'll see you back in the classroom.